I managed to collect more than 150 historical photos that you might have missed. Write in the comments what photos you liked and why. In thick fog off Iceland on May 1st, 1942, HMS King George V accidentally rammed HMS Punjabi, cutting the destroyer in half. Punjabi sank with 49 men, while the battleship survived with this crushed bow. Big Bill Franks was a Caddo performer from Oklahoma who reportedly weighed 624 pounds. He charged audiences 50 cents to meet him, but insisted advertisements say he appeared rather than was exhibited. In August 1972, Idi Amin ordered Uganda's Asian minority to leave within 3 months. Around 50,000 people were expelled, and the sudden loss of skilled workers devastated Uganda's economy. In 1914, Colorado troops attacked the Ludlow tent colony and burned it to the ground, killing miners and their families. 11 children suffocated beneath a burning tent, while no militiaman was convicted. Vasily Chuikov commanded the 62nd Army through the brutal Battle of Stalingrad in 1942. 3 years later, the future Soviet Marshal accepted the surrender of Berlin's defenders. Marvin Gaye Sr. was arrested after fatally shooting his son, music legend Marvin Gaye, on April 1, 1984. The killing happened one day before the singer's 45th birthday. On July 29, 1967, a rocket accidentally fired across the deck of the USS Forrestal, igniting fuel and bombs. The disaster killed 134 sailors and injured 161. Camp Boiro was Guinea's most feared prison under dictator Ahmed Sékou Touré from 1960 to 1984. Thousands died there through execution, torture, and deliberate starvation. French troops land near Murmansk in 1918, sent to guard Allied war supplies during Russia's Civil War. Their mission soon became an armed intervention against the Bolsheviks. Soviet women eat breakfast inside a Finnish-run concentration camp in occupied Petrozavodsk during the Continuation War. Thousands of civilians were confined in these camps, where hunger, disease, and forced labor killed many prisoners. A Prague protester bares his chest before a Soviet tank during the invasion of Czechoslovakia in August 1968. Moscow sent troops to crush the Prague Spring reforms, ending hopes for free speech and political change. Jacob Riis photographed workers burying unclaimed New Yorkers in a mass grave in 1890. This trench on Hart Island often held the poor, the homeless, and unidentified bodies. This is believed to be the final photograph of Anne Frank, pictured with her sister Margot in 1942. 3 years later, both sisters died from typhus at Bergen-Belsen, just weeks before liberation. These stacks of plates were found in the Titanic wreck in 1985. Their wooden cabinets had rotted away, but the dishes remained almost perfectly arranged. During World War I, wounded soldiers were routinely given cigarettes in military hospitals. Doctors believed smoking calmed nerves, while tobacco companies supplied millions of free packs to troops. In besieged Sarajevo, a man lights a cigarette for a French United Nations soldier. The brief exchange was photographed on January 12, 1993. In November 1952, an oil slick on Cleveland's Cuyahoga River erupted into flames. The blaze caused more than $1 million in damage and destroyed 3 tugboats. Members of the Communist Party of Burma manufacture ammunition by hand in the 1970s. Hidden jungle workshops like this supplied their long-running armed rebellion against Myanmar's government. 9 sailors were rescued after the 4-masted schooner Kohler washed ashore in North Carolina during a 1933 hurricane. The wreck remained there until World War II, when it was burned for scrap metal. In 1991, retreating Iraqi forces set fire to more than 600 Kuwaiti oil wells, turning daylight nearly black. International firefighters battled the flames for 8 months before extinguishing the final well. In February 1996, American and Russian peacekeepers in Bosnia exchanged military rations. Months after the Dayton Agreement, former Cold War rivals were serving together to keep the peace. In 1957, Hazel Bryan screamed at Elizabeth Eckford as she entered Little Rock Central High School. Bryan later apologized, but their brief friendship ended. On the Princess Bride set, even the stuntmen looked small beside Andre the Giant. No double matched his 7'4" frame, so dangerous scenes required special camera tricks. Taken in 1916, this workshop mass-produced prosthetic legs for soldiers who survived amputations during World War I. The crowded tables reveal the devastating scale of injuries caused by modern weapons. Newsboys once worked long hours on dangerous city streets for tiny wages. These two boys carried newspapers outside a pool hall while casually smoking cigarettes like grown men. For 4 pennies, homeless men in Victorian London could sleep in coffin-shaped wooden boxes at a Salvation Army shelter. The grim beds were cheap, dry, and safer than the street. George Mallory and Andrew Irvine vanished near Everest's summit in 1924, leaving one haunting question. Did they reach the top first? Mallory's body appeared in 1999, but their camera remains missing. A survivor of a sunken German U-boat is blindfolded before being taken prisoner in 1943. The blindfold stopped him from learning the Allied ship's layout or identifying its crew. Al Capone's FBI file lists a long trail of arrests, with many charges dismissed or dropped. Tax evasion finally ended his luck, sending America's most feared gangster to prison in 1931. In December 1971, India camouflaged the Taj Mahal to hide it from Pakistani bombers. The war ended with East Pakistan becoming independent Bangladesh. This is the Chagan nuclear test at the Semipalatinsk site in 1965. The underground blast was stronger than Hiroshima and created a crater that later became a radioactive lake. A Soviet T-54 crushes a bus used by protesters as a barricade. The scene was captured during the 1968 invasion of Czechoslovakia. Soviet soldiers inspect handcuffs inside a Gestapo prison in Berlin in early June 1945. The restraints were found just weeks after the Nazi secret police lost control of the city. This Soviet Mi-24 was shot down by a Stinger missile in Afghanistan in 1988. The heat-seeking weapon forced Soviet pilots to fly higher and change their tactics. 3 American soldiers of the 9th Machine Gun Battalion guard a railroad shop in Château-Thierry, France, in 1918. Their unit helped stop the German advance during one of the first major American battles of the war. During the 1991 Gulf War, this Israeli family waited in a sealed room wearing gas masks. Iraq fired 39 Scud missiles at Israel, raising fears of chemical attacks. Lippstadt, April 1945. Liberated Buchenwald prisoners walked beside German civilians after a liquor store was looted. Allied troops had forced the Germans to retreat, freeing the women enslaved at a nearby car factory. Tourists pose on the Great Buddha of Kamakura in 1882. The bronze statue survived a massive tsunami that destroyed its hall and has stood outdoors for centuries. A woman kisses an American soldier during the celebrations that followed Germany's surrender in 1945. The brief moment captured the relief of victory after 6 years of war. In 1888, the Russian imperial train derailed near Borky, killing 21 people. Emperor Alexander III and his family escaped alive, fueling rumors that their survival was a miracle. During the First World War, pilot candidates were violently spun in a Barani chair to test balance and motion sickness. This shaken man is recovering after the experiment in Issoudun, France. Zond 8 photographed the moon's hidden far side during its historic Soviet mission in October 1970. This stark image revealed a battered landscape humans can never see directly from Earth. A Japanese torpedo tore the bow from USS Selfridge during the Battle of Vella Lavella in October 1943. Her forward magazine somehow did not explode, and the destroyer survived. A Soviet Mi-24 fires unguided rockets at Mujahideen positions in Afghanistan. Nicknamed the Flying Tank, this armored gunship could carry troops while attacking targets with cannons, missiles, and rockets. Japanese aircraft set Dutch harbor ablaze during their June 1942 raid on the Aleutian Islands. A damaged Zero crashed on nearby Akutan Island, giving the United States its first flyable example of Japan's feared fighter. In 1919, more than 50,000 people packed Fenway Park to demand Irish independence. Irish leader Eamon de Valera addressed the enormous Boston crowd. In 1939, New York Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia came face-to-face with a 300-pound halibut at the Fulton Fish Market. The enormous flatfish weighed more than many of the men watching. In December 1941, many Leningrad civilians survived on just 125 grams of bread a day. The ration loaf contained flour mixed with substitutes like bran and cellulose. John Cobb prepares his giant Railton Special at Brooklands before attacking the land speed record. He reached 350 miles per hour in 1938, then returned in 1939 and pushed it to 369. On September 23, 1946, the River Irwell flooded 5,000 homes in Lancashire. Local boys formed a human chain through the dangerous water, turning disaster into a playground. Soviet troops march over a Nazi flag during the Battle for Vienna in April 1945. The city fell after 8 days of fierce fighting. In 1976, Bruno Barbie photographed students walking to university through deep snow in Tehran. Their clothes capture everyday life in Iran just 3 years before the Islamic Revolution changed the country. This 1958 photograph shows Monument 3, a giant carved boulder in Guatemala known as the God of the Earth. The Cozumalwapa people created it between the years 600 and 900. As war approached, Major Goldie Gardner took the MGEX 135 to Dessau, Germany. He chased records in the fiercely contested international class for cars with engines from 750 to 1,100 cubic centimeters. In the grip of the white slave trader was a shocking British film released in 1911. It exploited fears that innocent English girls were being kidnapped and forced into prostitution abroad. Prisoners are transported to forced labor from a maximum security prison near Zima Station in the Irkutsk region. This rare photograph was taken in the Soviet Union in 1989. These Rhodesian Special Air Service soldiers carry Soviet machine guns during Operation Uruk in Mozambique in September 1979. The raid targeted guerrilla camps and key bridges used to move fighters and weapons. In November 1942, Ivan Belyakovtsev and Mikhail Bessarabov defended Stalingrad's ruins with a powerful anti-tank rifle. Their single-shot weapon could pierce early German tanks, but its brutal recoil punished every shot. Reba Whittle became the only American female military prisoner of war in Europe during World War II after her plane was shot down. Severely injured, she survived German captivity and returned home in January 1945. Hillary Clinton has her face painted at Wellesley College in 1969. That same year, she graduated with honors in political science and became the first student to deliver the college's commencement address. In Sarajevo on June 30, 1992, a 20-year-old Serbian sniper called Arrow prepared her rifle in a safe room. Fighting for Bosnian forces, she said she had lost count of how many people she had killed. In 1970, Richard Nixon stunned anti-war protesters by visiting the Lincoln Memorial at 4 in the morning. He discussed football and travel, while one student was reportedly high on LSD. In 1910, the Seine rose more than 8 meters and turned Paris streets into canals. Boats carried trapped residents through flooded neighborhoods for weeks. In 1938, a young girl searches a city dump in Ambridge, Pennsylvania. During the Great Depression, children often scavenged trash for reusable goods, scrap metal, and anything their families could sell. In 1930s, France, women wore black masks for a beauty contest judged only by their eyes. The masks hid every other feature, forcing judges to ignore the contestants' faces. Political commissar Alexei Yeremenko rallies Soviet troops into battle in 1942. Photographer Max Alpert captured the moment moments before Yeremenko was reportedly killed. In May 1943, Indian freedom fighter Subhas Chandra Bose posed with the crew of Japanese submarine the First 29. He had just crossed the ocean aboard enemy submarines to continue his fight against British rule. This image is not the Ishigaki tsunami, and the date is wrong. The disaster struck in 1771, while the largest recorded tsunami reached 524 meters in Alaska in 1958. These Lofoten fishermen proudly display their giant cod catch in 1910. Every winter, Arctic cod migrated to these islands, attracting thousands of fishermen and powering Norway's economy for centuries. Hermann Göring married actress Emmy Sonnemann in Berlin in 1935, with Adolf Hitler as best man. The lavish ceremony featured fighter planes circling overhead. In 1966, Florence suffered its worst flood in centuries, trapping cars in streets filled with mud. Thousands of volunteers, later called the Mud Angels, rescued priceless books and artworks. In 1925, Miss Bronx Edith Higgins posed beside other Miss America contestants in daring knee-length swimsuits. Higgins reached the top 5, but California's Fay Lanphier took the crown. In the 1960s, Sears trained department store Santas to answer difficult questions and calm nervous children. Students even practiced beard care, toy knowledge, and the perfect ho-ho-ho. In 1953, Mexican photographer Nacho Lopez asked actress Mati Huitron to walk through Mexico City while he secretly captured men staring at her. The staged experiment became one of Mexico's most famous photo essays. Days after Iran's 1979 revolution, thousands of women protested an order forcing them to wear the hijab. The demonstrations began on International Women's Day and continued for 6 days. In 1965, dozens of helicopters packed the 1st Cavalry Division base at An Khê, Vietnam. Soldiers called this massive helipad the Golf Course. Dresden's Pirnaischer Platz lies in ruins after Allied bombing raids on February 13th and 14th, 1945. The attacks and resulting firestorm destroyed much of the city center and killed tens of thousands. Pit ponies hauled heavy coal carts through tunnels too narrow for machines. Some lived underground for months, working in darkness until laws finally ended their use in British mines. On November 9, 1989, East Germany opened its borders, and stunned crowds rushed to the Berlin Wall. Strangers pulled each other to freedom as the Cold War's most hated barrier collapsed. A man tests a replica of Alexander Graham Bell's first telephone in a Detroit news photo from between 1915 and 1925. Unlike modern phones, its separate cone and receiver made every call a two-handed operation. Blinded in battle in 1915, French painter Jean-Julien Lemordant posed with his medals 2 years later. He survived the war and eventually returned to painting despite his devastating injuries. Captain Lewis Nixon lies hungover after raiding Hermann Göring's wine collection in Berchtesgaden in 1945. Ron Livingston later recreated the moment in Band of Brothers. Japanese Americans crowd behind barbed wire at an internment camp in the early 1940s. The United States imprisoned about 120,000 people, and nearly 2/3 were American citizens. This is Warsaw, months after the uprising of 1944. German forces expelled the survivors, then systematically burned and demolished the empty city, destroying about 85% of it. Sears once sold live donkeys through its mail-order catalog for $79.95. Buyers could even have the animal shipped to them by train. This was one adult's weekly ration in wartime Britain, including 1 egg, 3 ounces of bacon, and 2 ounces of butter. Bread and vegetables were obtained separately. In 1937, a man searched a Pennsylvania slag heap for pieces of coal that mines had thrown away. During the Great Depression, salvaged coal could mean heat for a struggling family. These wooden sandals let Idaho lumberjacks enter the mess hall without their boot spikes destroying the floor. They stayed strapped over the logging boots and may date to the 1920s. In 1970, troops of the 9th Infantry Division fought enemy forces along the South Vietnam and Cambodia border. The area was a key route for weapons and reinforcements entering South Vietnam. In 1977, Idi Amin met Mobutu Sese Seko in Shaba, where rebels threatened Mobutu's rule. Both dictators built brutal personality cults, but neither survived in power beyond 1997. Emilio Aguinaldo boards the USS Vicksburg after his capture in 1901. American troops found him through a daring mission disguised as prisoners and guards. Chadian forces captured this Libyan MiL Mi-24 attack helicopter during the Battle of Feta in 1987. The defeat cost Libya nearly 800 soldiers and dozens of armored vehicles. A young Viet Cong fighter carries a heavy rocket through the jungle during the Vietnam War. Women secretly moved weapons, gathered intelligence, and fought alongside men. This wreckage followed the Great Railroad Strike of 1877 after militia gunfire killed 20 people in Pittsburgh. The furious crowd burned 39 railroad buildings and destroyed 100 locomotives and 1,000 rail cars. In 1890, just 78 men at Banning No. 1 mine shipped over 58,000 tons of coal. By 1951, 500 miners produced 500,000 tons before the mine closed in 1956. The Japanese transport Kinugawa Maru lies wrecked on Guadalcanal in November 1943. American aircraft forced it ashore during a failed supply mission 1 year earlier. Annie McCarrick vanished in 1993, leaving groceries behind and never collecting her paycheck. A witness saw her with an unknown man, while anonymous callers later revealed details only police knew. In 1934, Maurice Lambert kissed his fiancée, Violet Hilton, beside her conjoined twin, Daisy. New York denied them a marriage license because officials ruled the marriage would legally involve 3 people. Lou Ferrigno poses with Sybil Danning while promoting Hercules in 1983. For the role, Ferrigno reached his heaviest condition at the time, weighing about 130 kilograms with remarkably low body fat. On May 7, 1976, Jocelyn Kouari and 6 women defended a Beirut building against 300 Palestinian fighters. She survived and later commanded a Lebanese Christian women's militia. In 1949, fishermen hauled giant sturgeon from the Caspian Sea for their valuable caviar. Soviet photographer Vladislav Makosha captured the dangerous work behind the luxury food. On May 7, 1964, a passenger shot both pilots of Pacific Airlines Flight 773. The plane crashed near San Ramon, California, killing all 44 people aboard. An American soldier stands inside Leipzig's Battle of the Nations Monument in April 1945. German troops had turned the giant memorial into a final stronghold before surrendering. In 1919, 18-year-old Walt Disney drove Red Cross ambulances in France. He covered his vehicle with cartoons years before creating Mickey Mouse. After Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968, riots set Washington ablaze. 13 people died and more than 1,000 buildings were damaged. On November 1, 1986, a fire at the Schweitzer Halle chemical plant poured toxic pesticides into the Rhine, killing fish for hundreds of kilometers. The cause remains unknown, despite claims of Stasi sabotage. In Sarajevo on June 30, 1992, a 20-year-old Serbian sniper codenamed Arrow fought for Bosnian forces. She said she had lost count of how many people she had killed. New York police arrested this French passenger in 1962 after finding 24 pounds of pure heroin. He had smuggled the massive shipment from France aboard a luxury ocean liner. This family photo shows Ted Bundy with his younger brother, Richard, before Ted became one of America's most notorious serial killers. Richard once deeply admired the brother whose hidden crimes would later shock the world. Kurdish fighters guard captured Iraqi soldiers during the 1991 uprising against Saddam Hussein. The rebellion briefly freed much of northern Iraq before government forces crushed it. During the Spanish Civil War, This Republican soldier aimed an 8mm Steyr Mannlicher rifle despite having no left hand. His bandaged arm supported the weapon while his right hand fired it. In May 1945, Danish resistance fighters detained 2 German soldiers as Nazi control collapsed. Resistance groups then seized streets and towns before British troops arrived. Nearly 63 years after John Kennedy was assassinated, every United States president was born before that day. Even the youngest, Barack Obama, was born in 1961. In 1939, a young migrant boy held his little sister beside their makeshift camp in Washington's Yakima Valley. Their family carried everything they owned while traveling between farms in search of work. In 1951, saxophonist Big J. McNeely dropped to the floor during a wild Los Angeles concert. The crowd leaned in so close that photographer Bob Willoughby called the image the ecstasy of jazz. Carla Faye Tucker killed 2 people with a pickaxe during a drug binge in 1983. After converting to Christianity, she gained support from Pope John Paul II, but Texas executed her in 1998. At Cannes in 1983, photographers put down their cameras and turned their backs on Isabella Gianni. They were protesting because she skipped a scheduled photo call to protect her private life. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in 1865, but reports of his ghost haunting the White House continued for decades. Presidents, first ladies, staff members, and even foreign leaders claimed they saw his solemn figure inside the mansion. In 1986, Nancy Reagan waved from the Statue of Liberty's crown during its reopening. The ceremony marked its centennial after an $87 million restoration. In 1938, 7 siblings crossed Oklahoma with the eldest sibling's children. Packed into a truck during the Great Depression, they were searching for a better life. In 1893, Archduke Franz Ferdinand visited Canada's Okanagan region during his world tour. 21 years later, his assassination triggered the First World War. Marine Francis Kenny advances through Cape Gloucester with a Browning automatic rifle on January 8, 1944. He survived this battle, but was killed on Peleliu later that year at only 20. A young American soldier reads Playboy during a quiet moment in Vietnam in the 1960s. The magazine gave troops a brief escape from the fear and exhaustion of war. United States soldiers arrive in Haiti in 1994 for Operation Uphold Democracy. Their mission helped restore President Jean-Bertrand Aristide after a military coup forced him from power. In the 1950s, this family packed their life onto a tiny motor scooter. Their dog rode highest, balanced above a towering stack of luggage. Charles Bukowski spent decades in poverty before becoming famous in the 1970s. At 49, he quit the post office to write brutally honest books about alcoholism, sex, and life at society's edge. Königsberg Castle stood intact in 1936, but British bombing and the Soviet assault left it ruined by 1946. Soviet authorities demolished the remains in 1967, erasing a landmark that had stood for centuries. This 1978 photograph shows American neo-Nazi activist Martin Kerr at 26. Decades later, he became the leader of New Order, the successor to the American Nazi Party. In 1976, Soviet swimmer Shavash Karapetyan saw a trolleybus sink in a reservoir and dived into the freezing water. He broke its rear window and rescued 20 trapped passengers, suffering severe injuries that ended his career. In Amman in 1999, Jordanian brides waited together before a record mass wedding. 48 couples took part in the enormous ceremony. This worn document is a United States non-resident alien border crossing card from 1943. It allowed its owner to cross the border repeatedly instead of receiving permission for a single visit. Magdalene laundries imprisoned women deemed immoral and forced many to work without pay. Ireland's last institution closed in 1996 after operating for more than 2 centuries. This 1,000-year-old wooden chest held the tools of a Viking-age craftsman from Gotland. Inside were iron saws, tongs, files, and equipment for working over fire. In 1916, French soldiers built a fire inside a ruined church in Saint-Mihiel. Sacred furniture became shelter and fuel on the shattered Western Front. 3 Soviet orphans stand in the ruins of their home in late 1942. Millions of Soviet children lost their homes or families during the war. This is the Bell X-22, an experimental aircraft with 4 propellers inside rotating ducts. It flew from 1966 until 1988, but its unusual vertical takeoff design never entered production. Chinese soldiers beg a South Korean soldier for mercy, convinced they are about to be executed in 1951. Instead, they were taken prisoner during the Korean War. Hideki Tojo was convicted of war crimes after Japan's defeat. On December 23, 1948, the former prime minister was executed by hanging. A Japanese-American family stands outside temporary housing after returning to Los Angeles from wartime incarceration. Many survivors came home to find their houses, businesses, and savings gone. In 1912, Germany, a 284-kilogram man and his 174-kilogram wife prepared for a carriage ride. Together, they weighed 458 kilograms, placing an extraordinary burden on the horse and carriage. A caught Soviet black market dealer is questioned by police beside his seized goods in the 1980s. Selling imported Western clothing could bring prison time because private trade was illegal in the Soviet Union. Colchester's first female mayor, Catherine Hunt, tastes an oyster at the town's official season opening in 1925. The ancient ceremony marks the moment local oyster harvesting can begin. Russian soldiers celebrate after capturing the presidential palace in Grozny in January 1995. The ruined building had become the main symbol of fierce Chechen resistance. An Iranian mother and daughter walked through Tehran in the mid-1930s. Soon after, the government banned traditional veils, and police forcibly removed them from women in public. William Burroughs, after fatally shooting his wife, Joan Vollmer, in Mexico City in 1951. He claimed they were playing William Tell when the bullet struck her forehead. These women were photographed in Whitechapel around 1888, when Jack the Ripper was hunting local prostitutes. His identity remains unknown, and fear turned every dark street into a possible death trap. These men were not sleeping over a rope for pennies. They were actors staging the harsh practice of penny hanging for the movie The Great Train Robbery. In 1907, Syria Sue offered $1,000 to anyone who could make her laugh. Nobody won because facial paralysis had left her unable to smile. This photograph from Udmurtia in 1930 shows a bride hidden beneath a veil of coins beside the groom's sister. She is being led to a river for a traditional wedding dowsing ritual. After the First World War, captured German helmets were crushed and mixed into British road foundations. This photograph shows workers sorting thousands of helmets before their unusual final use. United States bombers flew at rooftop height toward Romania's Ploiesti oil refineries on August 1, 1943. The daring raid became a disaster, with 53 bombers lost and hundreds of airmen killed or captured. This photo shows firefighters aboard the Grand Camp on April 16, 1947, moments before 2,200 tons of ammonium nitrate exploded. Nearly everyone pictured was killed, along with about 500 others in Texas City. In 1955, the Joyita was found drifting in the Pacific, but all 25 people aboard had vanished. Its cargo, lifeboats, and navigation equipment were also missing, and no confirmed trace of anyone was ever found. In 1932, this patient blew into a tube to keep the device's mercury level steady. At the same time, the doctor measured how his blood pressure changed under strain. Lewis Hine secretly entered factories as an equipment salesman or Bible seller to expose exhausted child workers. His photographs shocked the public and helped turn America against child labor. Spanish Republican militiamen posed with a huge homemade grenade launcher during the siege of Oviedo in 1936. The improvised weapon hurled explosives toward nationalist positions. Gestapo agents stare from a prison cell after Allied forces liberated Liège, Belgium, in September 1944. This photograph was taken inside the city's fortress-like citadel the following month. Martin Lorello, known as the human owl, could rotate his head nearly 180 degrees. Born in Germany, he turned this rare ability into a famous American sideshow act. During Prohibition, the United States government ordered toxic chemicals added to industrial alcohol to stop bootleggers. Poisoned liquor still reached drinkers, and an estimated 10,000 people died. Sylvester Roper built a steam-powered bicycle that may have been the first motorcycle. In 1896, he died during a speed trial, but no one knows whether his heart attack caused the crash or followed it. Madrid's Telefonica building was Europe's tallest skyscraper when the Spanish Civil War began. Artillery repeatedly struck it because Republican forces used its height to watch enemy positions. A hangar burns on Ford Island during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. The raid killed more than 2,000 Americans and pushed the United States into World War II. In 1954, a Texas couple held their wedding underwater at the Aquarena Springs Marine Theater. They wore breathing masks during the ceremony, while the bride kept her full wedding dress on. These rare photographs show former President Andrew Jackson just months before his death in 1845. Orphaned by 14, he later became a general, president, slave trader, and architect of Indian removal. Write in the comments what photos you liked and why.